Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
Joel, the topic today is one that you brought to us. You brought to my attention a book that you found called Bad Therapy, and as soon as I saw the title, all I could think was, well, Joel used to be a therapist and he left the profession to become a life coach. It's something that happens more now than it would have, say, even 10 years ago, but it's still a fairly rare thing to happen. And I got to ask you, to what degree does what goes on in therapy affect your decision to stop being a therapist?
Well, I never liked the confines of what a traditional therapist would have to do. You know what I'm saying? I didn't like that. The very stringent, you can't share your own experiences. There's no thinking outside the box. I use multiple methods, modalities. And you need to be very specific. And one of the things, if you're a therapist, and most of the times you're taking insurance, insurance companies almost demand immediately that you have a diagnosis day one. I mean, it's just absurd. It's just insurance companies want a diagnosis day one. And anybody that gives a diagnosis day one is not doing a good job. And I just said the idea that you have much more latitude in life coaching, and I understand that, not all therapists are quote unquote bad. They're not all bad. And I don't think there's really any of them bad. It's just the system, the way it's set up. And as time has progressed, we have more people in therapy today, kids in particular, than ever been in the history of our country. And our mental health is worse than it's ever been. So that has to tell us something. And so I think that's what this show's about, to deep understanding why. And, the idea of diagnosing children with every ailment on the planet and adults, and it's just sort of an erasure of resilience. And it's not your fault because you have ADHD, or it's not your fault. It really starts programming a system that nobody's accountable. Nobody and people that believe they're disordered behave in a disordered manner. So it's sort of that cycle we're in. And as therapy, trauma, you and I have discussed this a lot. The concept of trauma, and I'm certainly one. Trauma affects people greatly. I believe trauma needs to be processed. But at some point, as I've said millions of times on the show, it feels like there needs to be a period after that. Trauma's processed. Let's go. Let's move forward, and anchoring people to their childhood trauma over and over every session for the rest of their lives has a reverse effect. And this is really going to upset a lot of people, this book in particular, because it really pushes back. And I don't necessarily agree with everything in the book, but the concept, I really believe that we're quick to take our kids to the doctor. I have a young man, 12 years old, ended up his parents called me sort of frantically. He went to see his just a general practitioner doctor, just the pediatrician, right? Mm-hmm. And he said, I've been feeling, I'm really sad, and I'm just not feeling myself. And the doctor gave him Prozac.
Oh my!
Without, and he's a pediatrician. I love pediatricians, but he didn't refer to a psychiatrist. He didn't refer to therapy. He said, well, here, try some Prozac. Let's see if that helps. It's like, his parents didn't even start the medication. He's like, well, that seems like a drastic leap. Nobody asked why this kid's sad. Nobody's asked what's going on. And why don't we determine that? Turns out the kid's, his best friend, since he's been 2 years old, they've been friends since 2 years old. His best friend moved across the country. They're not here. That's what the kid's sad. And Prozac had no shot of helping that. Nobody asked that.
Wow.
And so there's countless cases where we prescribe psychotropic medications for these children. Their brains aren't fully developed. There's no way to predict what a combination of psychotropic medication will do in a developing brain. There is no solid research. I promise you, I don't know what it is, but it's not good. It's not intended to be interrupted that way. So, but the labeling of children, I've had I have a young man that one of the coolest kids I ever met. He's a quirky little guy. He's got ADHD and he has Asperger's. I knew he had Asperger's the second I talked to him. I begged his parents not to get him diagnosed. I said, please don't get. He's getting A's and B's. He holds a job. He's quirky. He's going to, but he has friends and he's not unhappy. And the mom just insisted. So he got a full-blown diagnosis of Asperger's in the autistic spectrum. And he's now behaving as somebody that is disordered. His grades have fallen. He doesn't like working anymore. He thinks he's embarrassed to go to school because he thinks everybody knows he has Asperger's. And it's like, what good was that? That didn't do anything.
Yeah.
No positive. Yeah. And so this is a big topic of mine. And I'm not anti-therapist. I work closely with a lot of therapists, but we have become a nation of diagnosis. And sometimes it's just, hey, the people that really need medication and the people that really need these interventions in a way, and all this, they are almost not being served because everybody gets thrown all this stuff, and the people that really need it sometimes just they fall between the cracks, or they just brought into the other norms. And and the reason why this in the book, she talks a lot about the idea that you go see, let's say you go see random therapists, a 40-year-old female. She works with adolescents with light depression and anxiety. Okay. So you're going to send that kid to her, and she's going to work with them. It may be very effective. She may refer somebody for medication if you feel that needs to happen. But nobody wants to treat the 16-year-old, fully schizophrenic, delusional client so we don't, those are the ones everybody's scared of. So nobody wants to treat them. So they end up getting stuck with the local mental health crisis centers, and again, usually not the best care. They're the ones that end up on 15 or 20. So the people that are sort of easy, the upper middle class families who are going to pay every session, and the kid's not going to jump up and try to stab them or kill them, or it's just there's a tendency that the people that really need good therapy don't get it, and the people that don't need good therapy or don't need therapy end up getting therapy, and often it's bad therapy.
Wow, I have a few reactions to what you're talking about, because you touched on so many really interesting and poignant things in that little bit of a rant there. One of the things that jumps out at me is the idea that the kids, particularly from what you were describing as the well-off families, their physicians or therapists or whoever it is that we're talking about, it sounds like they're diagnosing in search of a condition.
Yes. Yes.
It's not the other way around. It's not we found a condition, we're going to diagnose it. It's we have a diagnosis, we want to make it fit something.
Well, and that's sort of the point. So you take your child, say the school guidance counselor, which is a whole nother topic. The school guidance counselors are often awful. They get in the middle of stuff. They don't know what they're doing. They get intrusive. I'm not saying everyone. But the school guidance counselors, they tend to overstep their boundaries. So they'll say to a mom, well, maybe they need to go see a therapist. So they go see a therapist. When you go see a therapist, what do you think their first thing to do? They're obviously searching for a diagnosis. Why are you here? Years ago, I was doing trainings for people working with alcoholics. And I had a case, one of the cases, I would have them diagnose various things using different cases. So I had an actor, just a kid from college, so he played the role. He went in, we asked him questions about he said, I don't know if I'm an alcoholic or not. So everybody, the team started asking him the questions. You drink more than you planned? He goes, maybe once or twice in college, but not really. Not anyone, everybody at the end, when I asked, what's your diagnosis? What would you recommend? Not one person said, maybe he's not an alcoholic. No, nobody, and he wasn't by the criteria I had him discuss. He wasn't, but yet he appeared there searching for a diagnosis, or what should I do with my alcohol? I'm checking myself out. Those were things that just wait a minute, what are we doing with that? So that's when you go see a therapist, and especially, this isn't anti-parent either, but parents are going to bring something to the table. The therapist knows that they're getting paid. They're looking for an answer. I've had parents get mad when, this is several years ago. I had a lady send her son to me, and he's 20 years old in college. She said, I think he's horribly depressed, and I think he's an alcoholic. And I said, okay. So I talked to him, and I'm like, normal college kid. He drinks some, but nothing outrageous. And he's not reporting any depression. He's playing on the basketball team. He holds a job, and he has a 3.6 grade point average. What? That's not a sign of depression. And so I told him, I said, there's nothing wrong with you. I said, and he said, well, my biological dad was an addict, and he suicidal, and he killed himself one day over depression. So my mom keeps seeing my dad and me. So I did say this. I didn't really mean to report it to the mom this way. I didn't really care, but I said, your mom's overreacting. You're fine. So he called his mom, said, yeah, Joel says you're overreacting. And she was furious. And I said, I did say that, and you are. I didn't mean it to be disrespectful. I understand the origins, but you are overreacting. You are filtering for your son to be the same thing your ex-husband was. That's what you're filtering. So you're seeing that behavior, so you're assigning that. She ended up getting him to 2 or 3 different therapists. And they all worked with, and they all came to the same conclusion after time. He's not really, he's fine. And, the guy later came back to me asking if I'd work with him, not for those issues, but just some performance stuff. He's getting graduate degree. And he said, yeah, she kept it. She finally gave up after the 3rd therapist said, no, there's not a problem here. And she said, you told me that the first day. And, he said, that's why I want to come work with you, because you weren't searching for the diagnosis. I assume there's nothing wrong with you when you come to me. I just want to help with goals and behavior. Now, if I discover something's wrong, or there is an issue, or somebody's not in touch with reality, obviously I quickly refer them to someone who's able to be able to help. Because you have access. I work with tons of therapists, but the idea that you start off with that something's screwed up, and a lot of it's just based on the parent's perspective. He doesn't. One lady said, well, he doesn't want to work in computers, and that's why she sent him to him. He's like 16. So I met with him, and a great kid, again, really more of an athlete than a computer kid. And so I said, yeah. I said, why are you here? And he goes, I don't know. I said, well, your mom says you don't want to work in computers. He goes, well, she's right. And I said, I agree with you. You don't. So I said, my diagnosis is he doesn't want to work in computers. So there's nothing wrong with it. You have to accept he's 16. He's going to make his own choice on those things. And a lot of times parents,
therapists, the ones who confirmed what you said, kudos to them, because they didn't fall into the
diagnosis. And they worked really hard at it, but they realized after several sessions, there's nothing here. And but that idea that we have a society that, because of all this, I forget these numbers are off because they're several years old. But at one point, there were 270 million prescriptions written for antidepressants in the United States.
Geez. That's 2 for every 3 people in the country.
Yeah. And now I admit sometimes people are trying different ones or whatever, but even if you filter all that out, it's suggesting that 50% of the people in the United States need antidepressants. The truth of people who have chemical imbalances in their brain that's causing depression or anxiety, whatever their stuff is generally at most 5 to 7%. At most. I don't think it's that high. Now they need it, but in whatever year that it became, the Prozac, I use that, the serotonin uptake drugs. Once they realized there was a connection, psychiatrists quit being talking therapists. They became prescribers, and then that left therapists to do the talking and doctors to do prescribing, because pharmaceutical companies love the idea that this whole new venture was built, whole new revenue stream for antidepressants. And psychiatrists loved it because they could see 5 or 6 patients in an hour, prescribe a pill, and say, "See me in a month," and see how it's working. And it changed mental health. And it's just I'm horrified at the automatic, when you go see a psychiatrist, the first thing they're going to throw at you is psychotropic medication. It may be needed. I'm not saying it isn't, but you got to get an understanding of the origins of why people are feeling the way they're feeling. If it's situational or environmental, adding or detracting serotonin from your brain is not going to change anything.
Yeah. Well, it also reinforces something for me too, which is that if you're throwing medication at complaints of any kind, regardless of whether the complaint comes from the person themselves or from, say, a parent, if you're just going to throw medication at it, then not only are you not doing your job, in my opinion, but you're also perpetuating a false narrative.
Yes.
And the false narrative is you are sick until proven otherwise.
Yes. And one of the things that I program in people is there's nothing wrong with you. We have to adjust your mindset. We have to do these things. And they come with a different model. The other side comes with a different model. We're assuming something's pretty just upset with you. You're not right. You're imbalanced. So we're going to throw some chemicals in your brain and attempt to balance them. Now, even if you read the label of an antidepressant today, and I encourage people to look this up online under they will say, "We don't know how these things work. Here's what we think happens." It literally says that. It says that on the label. We're saying this happened. We don't have any real proof, but here's what we're going with because it does do this, and that's what it's sort of like trying to make a correlation. It's just yeah, there we go. So we're going to raise some serotonin. If your mother dies and you're 12 years old and you're depressed, that is not a lack of serotonin at all. That is your mother died, and you should be depressed, and you need to deal with that. Not medicate away from it, not mess with your developing brain, not doing all that stuff. And so the labels and I have so many people like the young man with Asperger's. Yes, he has Asperger's, but so does some of the wealthiest men in the world have Asperger's and ADHD. It isn't a disability; it's just an understanding of why you're a little quirky and awkward. Most Asperger people are super intelligent, very productive people. It's just they're socially awkward often. They don't understand, normal body language and cues sometimes, but you can learn those things. But yet all of a sudden, then they randomly, I never understood this. Asperger's was a standalone diagnosis many years ago. And then someone said, "Hey, let's throw that on the autistic spectrum." It's like, oh, okay, well, that's random. It's like, it's so you have the totally nonverbal autistic kids, and that's on the autistic spectrum. They are there, and then you have Elon Musk, one of the wealthiest men in the world, on the other side of it. So they're the same spectrum. Are you kidding?
And he doesn't actually have any trouble talking.
No, he can't shut up. I mean, that's that's his problem. but you get my point. I mean, and he's obviously a genius, whether you like the guy or not. He's obviously very smart. Yeah, and so the Bill Gates allegedly has that as well. He's done well for himself. I mean,
not too bad.
Yeah, he's hanging in there. But when you do this, and I'm really passionate about this topic, other than some of my other topics, this is right up there. But so when I read this book, the effects of this changes society right now. There's labels. Kids today, they're talking about their diagnosis. I see kids on Instagram that that are following me or whatever for my life coaching business. They'll say, "I'm neurodivergent," or "I'm these things." They're literally listing it like, "Oh, well, here's my list of diagnosis." It's just,
right.
It's just bizarre. And you don't want that label. Like I have ADHD. I have learned to use my ADHD to my advantage. I would not go to a neurotypical brain if you gave me the choice. I wouldn't. Yes, it's a shit show up there half the time, but it's so fun. I'm so productive. I can't imagine not having this brain. And now it was not easy when I was 13, 14, 15, because nobody had any clue what was going on.
Sure.
But now that I figured it out, it's like, I believe ADHD could be considered an evolution of the brain when you figure out how to use it.
Yeah. I remember when Nikki was on the show with us a few months back, and you guys were comparing notes on what's like at that age to be diagnosed, or even later to be diagnosed as ADHD. And I remember the stories you were telling about how nobody had any clue at all, which was true. I mean, that's been true for a lot of things for a number of years now.
Yeah. And this is funny. So when I was 12 years old, I never got anything below an A or whatever I think they gave numbers back in elementary school, but until I got to middle school, I was always the top of everything. Fastest reader, fastest math guy, because everything took place in class. I just had to listen to the teacher say, I figured it out. But middle school, they started giving homework. Well, I'm not doing homework. I'm not going to do it. Just my brain is not going to sit at the kitchen table after sitting all day and doing it. So I would do fine in class stuff, but I'd never get any homework done. So, I had been, really good. So everybody's trying to figure out what happened from elementary school to middle school for Joel. So there's a very nice little therapist. She was a very short lady. I remember this. So I'm embarrassed that I had to go see a therapist anyway when I was 12. Again, in middle school, the goal is to be in the middle. You don't want to be outlier. So therapist was not. I was very embarrassed by that.
It's called middle school for a reason. Yes,
exactly. That's why they named it that way. I believe middle school, you just want to be in the middle. You don't want to be on either side. In the middle. So I go see this lady. She gives me a battery of tests. I knocked every test out of the park. She's like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. You're so smart. And she gave me all this accolades. So afterwards, the later at that age, somebody had come up with it was brand new. Dyslexia was the diagnosis then. It was so she immediately after knowing that, she said, well, he's really smart, but he has dyslexia. He mixes up his letters. And so I said, okay, well, that might be it. So let me read. So I read the diagnostic criteria for dyslexia. And I said, no, that's not it. That's not it. It is. You're in denial. And I told my mom, I said, Mom, I don't have dyslexia. So they go see the school. They said, we're going to give you this, that, whatever accommodation. I said, I don't have dyslexia. And of course, everybody said, you're just fighting the diagnosis. You don't have dyslexia. You have dyslexia. And I just said, okay, I got dyslexia. Whatever, doesn't matter. That has nothing to do. I read the diagnostic criteria. It had nothing to do with me not being able to focus for a long period of time on crap I don't like. Me reading literature, old English literature and stuff, and I can't, to this day, I can't sit down and read something obnoxiously boring like that. I can't, but I could spend 7 hours on a deep dive reading about neuroscience and quantum theory. I mean, I can go deep with that. I would get a doctorate in metaphysics over this stuff. It's just, so the stuff I'm into, I got as much as I need on the silliness, in my opinion, the silliness. I don't really care about what happened in Egypt in 402. It doesn't matter. Care less. Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. I don't care. But today is, once I realized what ADHD was, I was like, oh, okay. And so I was basically, I sort of bought into it. And so by the time I was in high school, the teacher's like, he's just lazy and unmotivated. He's smart, but he's lazy and unmotivated. And of course, I don't want to do any of the dyslexia training because, that I don't have dyslexia. So that was pretty common. So I didn't want to do that. And so my parents and I had battles. Now I was still able to get out of high school. But I performed way under my ability. I was in fact, I had a class in my senior year. It was called Problems of American Democracy. It was mandatory for all seniors. Okay. And I couldn't graduate without it. So I'd fallen between the cracks. I hadn't done any work, very minimal work. And so I had an F, and they realized about 3 weeks before graduation, I have an F. And they're like, Joel, you're going to fail and you can't graduate. And I had to get a 95 on my final to get it up to a passing grade. So I just grabbed the book, sat down, studied, I got 100. And they were like, well, why didn't you do it all year? Because I didn't care. It didn't matter, but it mattered now. I didn't want to get out of high school. And so I was able to do it. I just didn't care, but not because I didn't care. It's just I'd spent years told I was lazy and didn't care. So I became lazy and I didn't care. So when you label people that's what gets me. That's why I'm so much about what you call yourself. I correct, my clients all the time. I don't let them talk negatively about themselves. Your inner dialogue is so important. And when you start believing these crazy diagnoses, you act that way. We become over-diagnosed by far. And sometimes, I literally had to go to an IEP meeting for a plan for students in school for accommodations and stuff like that. And they're trying to make this little 6-year-old guy start taking Ritalin. And, I'm like, we can't do this to his brain. He goes, but he can't sit still. And I go, he sits. He's not intended to sit still for 45 minutes. His job is to get up and touch things and discover and go run around in circles and put Play-Doh up his nose. That's his job. He's supposed to do that. And so, let him do his work here. We need some of that. He's supposed to go fall in the mud, fall out of a tree. That's what he's supposed to be doing. We'll teach him how to read. We'll teach him how to add, and then we'll go throw mud balls at each other. That's what he's supposed to be doing. But, and his parents didn't let him take it. But, I don't know how many kids get put on that, especially, again, middle class, upper middle class, a wealthy family. They think, okay, we got plenty of money, so we're going to constantly do that. I find it interesting that families that can't afford all that stuff probably end up with better performing kids because they weren't stuffing, stimulants in their brain when they're 6 years old.
Right. Yeah. It occurs to me that a lot of what we're talking about here is asking people to respond to externalities. And what I mean by that is it's probably easily described this way. I want you to be a certain way. Therefore, you should respond to what I want. It's a common thing that for parents. Teachers often have that attitude.
Sure.
It happens a lot with kids from just about every important adult in their lives. Not every adult, but a lot of adults engage in that. And they engage in it largely because that's what they experience, not just as kids, but they experience it as grown-ups. So we have a society that is demonstrating on a regular basis that what's really important in their view is external influences. Yes, external influences should govern our lives. That's basically what it amounts to. And the reason I find that to be so fascinating is we are also encountering in our society a tremendous level of disconnect going on. And the disconnect is increasing. It's particularly pronounced among 30 and unders. The level of disconnect, people often blame it on social media. Social media is just a symptom of it.
Sure.
But the disconnect that under 30s often have with each other, with other people, and so forth. I really think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we think in terms of external influences. The external influences are the cause. We just have to identify what the right external influence is, treat it, solve it, throw a drug at it, whatever it takes, and everything will be better. And we say that as a society against all the evidence.
Yes.
I mean, you were talking earlier about how there are doctors who are giving out these prescriptions without having any idea. Even the drug makers themselves don't even know what the thing's going to do. And the first thought that went through my mind was, what happened to science? If somebody who is a non-licensed doctor were to do the same thing, the doctors would be all over them for pushing pseudoscience, and the critics would be all over them. But where are the critics when it comes to the doctors engaging in the same behavior? They're non-existent. Why? Because the whole society is oriented toward it's got to be an external cause. It can't be anything internal. It's got to be external.
Yeah, and that I view every client that walks in my door as a puzzle. and I like to find out everything environmental, what's going on with their brain, how school's going, how their grades are going, how their job's going, whatever. I want to know it all. And that way we can figure out. Sometimes sometimes it is something like that. Sometimes it is but I want to know and not just say, let's start with worst case scenario and work our way back. Why don't we start with the least invasive process and see if we can't have any improvement? If we need to get to the medication piece, if we need to get to those other things, absolutely, let's do that. And I like that.
But don't we also have to start with what is the problem? Is there an actual problem going on here?
That's what we have to ask the question. You don't go see, and my opinion, which means absolutely nothing, but that's strictly my opinion, is
it means something great.
Yeah, well, thank you. Chiropractors, a good chiropractor is very valuable. I have run across some really helpful, knowledgeable chiropractors that have really helped me, with especially with all my weightlifting and stuff like that. And they're probably 1% of the chiropractors. And the rest of them are just, hey, let me do this and sign you up for 78 treatments and keep you coming back. That's the idea. And so having, the idea, so a lot of chiropractors get a bad name because the majority are, in my mind, semi-scamish. But the ones that are effective are great. It's like anything else. Try to, if anybody wants a fun experiment, even if you don't have any back pain, just go to chiropractors will often have a sort of a deal like, here, $50, we'll do 2 x-rays, give you an adjustment and whatever. Go see a chiropractor. Even if you feel great, I promise you there's going to be something wrong with your spine that's going to require about 10 sessions of adjustments. I promise. It's just, you don't go see a chiropractor and go, there's not much I can do for you. I think you're good. Go back. Just keep doing what you're doing. And that's pretty much any doctor. When you go to a doctor, they have a bias toward diagnosis. That's their job. I'm not upset with that, but they need to teach. Why don't we have a bias toward there's nothing wrong either? Why don't we start with, is there, how minimal is this? But the question isn't often asked. It's just assumed. And I don't, as I said before, I don't like random diagnosis based on one session or one, basically go take the average 14-year-old male and send him in a therapist's office who's going to diagnose it. He's not giving any real answers. It's the first thing. Trust me, unless you don't know 14-year-olds, you think one's going to sit down and say, well, let me tell you the truth here. They're just going to ramble on what you want to hear. And just, I want to get out of here as quickly as possible so I can go play video games. That's what he wants to do. And so the lack of a connection, the lack of understanding, the overdiagnosis, societal view toward that is, it goes deeper than just therapy, but therapy has gotten out of hand. Our mental health crisis in the United States is far worse than it's ever been. I live in Virginia, and it is laughable what our mental health system is here. I'm a private practice. I'm a life coach. I don't take insurance. I have a waiting list. The people that could really benefit from me, unfortunately, can't reach me. I do some, pro bono sessions and stuff like that, but it's a drop in the bucket to be able to reach those people. And they're automatically set to, well, it's just a medication wheel for them. And then once you're on one medication, you're stuck on another, your appointment's forever. The doctor, this sounds so hateful, but if you go work we have a thing called a community service board system. That's what they call the mental health facility, community service board. Every one of them they're in counties. So like in my county of Hanover County, there's a community service board here. It is millions of dollars in debt every year. It's poorly run. The staff turnover is outrageous. So, do you think that the highest, the best of the best therapists, what I want to do? I want to go work for the Hanover Community Service Board and make 1/3 of what I can make in private practice, because I just want to do that and then deal with the bureaucracy and the constant turnover and the state, the inefficient way state runs any government. That's how they're ran, and it's absurd. And you can't get help. I have people that are in desperate need. People reach out to me all the time. There's just no resources available. We have a state representative, I believe. I forget his name. I think his last name was Deeds, D-E-D-S. Several years ago, he was constantly trying to get his son into rehab, or not rehab per se, and a lot of mental issues. Creed Deeds is, I think, his name. And his son was severely mentally disordered. And I don't know all of the details, and I can't recall it all, but his son ended up shooting him and killing himself after his. So this guy, after he recovered, has fought super hard to improve the mental health system. He's done some good. Like if he got all the mental health beds connected. So if you need a bed in an emergency, he can check the entire state and see where you want to go. We're a long way from it being good, but the system is so sad. And then you combine, the what I call lazy therapy, bad therapy, the reinforcing of victimhood. You have to stand on that. It's just such a ridiculous cycle, and it's so disheartening to watch, because I believe everybody, no matter where you're at, there's an improvement. There's a reason for you to be here, and it gets lost when you instead of the who am I being what do I like to do, what am I good at, what am I going to pursue, who am I becomes here are my disorders. Here's the things that are wrong with me. People introduce themselves with, "Hey, I'm so and so. I'm schizophrenic." It's like, what?
I'm remembering when you first brought this topic up to me last week. I remember now one of the things I wanted to make sure we talk about. I want to bring that in right now because we've talked a lot, both you and I and my other co-hosts and I, over the last few months. We talked about a lot of health-related issues, whether it be medical health, mental health, all the different ways that health is tied into our lives. And during that time period, I have given the opinion here on the show many times in many ways that we really don't deal with health anymore. We deal with sickness, we deal with illness,
Yes.
we deal with injury, and we call it healthcare, but it's not
Yes.
really health, which begs a very important question. A question that medical science is loath to answer, a question that psychology and psychologists and mental health professionals are loath to answer, which is, what is health? And more precisely, what is health without reference to disease, illness, chronic condition, injury, all the things that we normally say are the opposite of health? Well, they aren't really opposites. I mean, truly, if you're healed of a sickness, it doesn't mean you're well. It just means you no longer have the sickness. It doesn't mean that you're healthy. It just means that you no longer have that particular condition. So what is health? Because that to me is the one thing that it's the so-called elephant in the room. Nobody is willing to face up to the fact that we don't really have a clear idea of what health is.
That's like so many things, it's perspective based, depending who's telling you. But for your body, my mind of health is have a strong immune system, to have a great outlook on life, to get up and we're not on this planet to be miserable and whiny. We're not here to be sick and rotting. We're here to be able to perform, be able to move forward. I push my body beyond belief in the gym every day, and the side effect of all that ridiculous weightlifting is for me.
Besides
incredible health.
500 pounds, you mean?
Yeah. 500 pounds is pretty cool too. But the side effect is unbelievably perfect health. I feel fantastic. That's a side effect from it. I maintain a really intense schedule. I love my job. That's health to me. Health is when you're here and you're living life. You're feeling it. I've always told you, there's nobody that doesn't want to die more than me, and there's nobody more prepared to die than me. I'm just, when it happens, it happens. But until then, my foot's on the gas. I'm feeling good. And
Right.
a week or two ago, I had laryngitis, allergies and my colds and stuff. Yeah, I dealt with that. I quickly recovered. Didn't miss a day in the gym. All that stuff is what I believe in. Health is your perspective dictates that. When you believe Abraham Hicks, law of attraction in general, you're about as healthy as you believe you are, and your body will respond to that health. And I have never let off the gas from my weightlifting. I've always been doing it. So my body hasn't realized you're really old yet. It hasn't. Nobody's told my body. I don't want anybody to tell my body that, okay? Because you're really old now, Joel. But your body, it doesn't. All it's saying is this idiot is in the gym again today. We got to rise to that occasion. My brain is functioning. I promise you, it's functioning better today than it did when I was 30 years old. And that's health, Walt. That's mental health, that's physical health, that's spiritual health. All that stuff's combined. But I don't speak in health of sickness. I speak in health about quality, how you feel, and ability to recover. I've damaged my shoulders. I've damaged my knees. They always recover. I've had a chronic shoulder issue for a long time. I never stopped lifting weights. So one of the things that I went to the orthopedic guy not too terribly long. I don't know if I shared this with you. And I said, yeah, it's been bothering me a little bit more. And I said, I'm thinking I might need some surgery to repair that rotator cuff. And he goes, Joel, you no longer have a rotator cuff. It's gone. He said, there's nothing. He said, your body has adapted. The other muscles, your deltoid muscle, has worked around that. Your arm and shoulder is operating without a rotator cuff. And it just figured out how to work around. He said it happens very rarely, but I guess 50 years of lifting weights, it tends to happen that way, But I'm still strong and still do all that. It's like, yeah, it does ache occasionally, but now that I know there's no rotator cuff, I said, okay. He said, just go as hard as you can, as long as you want. And then one day you might need shoulder replacement. I said, I agree. Let's do it. And, it's fine. So health is about really, I want to get the most out of my body. I want to keep my mind sharp. That's what health is. And when you start telling everybody, I really avoid doctors. I really don't like going to doctors because they're looking for stuff. I had to have an X-ray for a physical I had not too long ago. So they made me get a chest X-ray. I was getting a life insurance policy, and they wanted to do a chest X-ray. So I go to get the chest X-ray, and so the guy comes back and he goes, "Ugh." He said, "There's a spot in your lung."
You told me this story. Yes, that's why I'm
laughing. And I'm like, no, I've never smoked. I'm good. And he goes, no. He said, "There's a spot." He said, he said, we have one or two things. I could go ahead and do an MRI on you, and we can see, or you can go set something up. I said, no, I'm not leaving here thinking I might have lung cancer. I'm not walking out the door without lung cancer. So I have to wait 90 more minutes. They do this. They give me this contrast stuff, which makes me want to throw up sometimes. And they did the CT scan, and it was like, no, there's nothing there. That was a spot on the X-ray machine. It was a false reading. But if I would have left that day believing I had lung cancer or potentially had lung cancer, my mind would have been focused on that. I wouldn't leave without that. I mean, and if I would have had it, I said, let's cut it out right now. Let's just get it right. Let's not hesitate. Let's get rid of it. But there's nothing there. So your lungs are perfectly clear. Your heart's perfectly fine. Everything's operating perfectly. But if I would have left without knowing that my lung was clear, that would have been a miserable mutt before I could have an appointment with somebody else.
I'm reminded of the TED Talk that Sean Aker, who we both admire, positive psychology guy, the TED Talk that he gave when his book, The Happiness Advantage, came out. And I remember exactly how the talk starts. The talk starts with him saying, and you see a screen come up behind him with a graph on. He says, I was told that when you do this talk, you should never lead off with a graph. I'm going to lead off with a graph. And the reason I want to lead off with this graph, as you can see, and you look at this graph, and it's this perfect, absolutely perfect hyperbolic curve. I mean, the mathematician couldn't draw it nicer, except for one dot that's above it.
Yeah.
Right? And he says, you can see from this curve just how good my results are, except for that one dot up there. That one dot is messing up my data. But fortunately, because of the laws of statistics, I can remove that dot because it's messing up my data.
Yeah.
And then he makes a really great point. His great point is, but as a positive psychologist, what I realized is I don't want to study that curve. I want to study that dot. I want to study that outlying piece of evidence, because that dot, if I can understand what caused that dot, I can move the whole curve up.
we have, I love that. And, I try to not say the same thing every show, but your mind, as I said, your mind is about as healthy as you believe you are. If you believe you're healthy, your body's going to respond with health, usually. And even if you're ill, if you believe you're going to get well, you're going to get well. Surgeons will, while dismissing the idea that your mindset has anything to do with it, they'll simultaneously agree that people that are positive, believe you're going to recover faster, universally recover faster. They'll tell you that, but they'll dismiss it later. So, when we believe something, when we accept it, Roger Bannister breaking the 4-minute mile, it was broken multiple times in a few months of him breaking it. Now, because he set the bar, and now it became, instead of impossible, it was doable. So there's so much of that that's missed with traditional medicine. They're looking for, like my blood work. When I'm forced to do blood work, and I hate it every time. Your liver enzymes excreted. They're called, the initials are ALT and AST. These are enzymes that exist in your liver, and when your liver's injured or damaged, it spills these enzymes out in greater quantities. So every time I get my blood drawn, they want to say, oh, there's something wrong with your liver because it's slightly elevated these enzymes. I have to actually sometimes get the doctor to Google it, because what also does that is heavy duty weight training that damages the muscle, which also contains AST and ALT. And so it raises that. So I do not have a damaged liver. I just got done working out 2 hours ago. So, and so the doctor actually said to me, what last time we did, he said, well, then I need you to quit lifting weights for 3 days and then let me test it over. And I said, or I will counter with, no, I won't. And I'll just keep lifting weights and you have a good day. I know it's not wrong. And the range, the range, I think the high range was 40 and I was 42. Even that case, it was just too over. Even if I wasn't lifting, I'm not going to mess with that. People can have a 700 AST or something. Then it's a problem. But 42 from 40, it doesn't matter. But yet the idea that across the board, they wanted to run a bunch of tests and scan my liver and do all this other silly stuff. And it's like, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. Makes no sense.
By the way, the reason I brought up the whole thing about the outlier, the dot that was above Sean Akers' curve, it was all fake data, by the way. He even said so. This chart measures nothing real, but he was illustrating something. He was illustrating the point that he would rather know what causes the outlier. I keep asking myself, if medical science and mental health science pursued the idea of the positive outlier instead of the negative outlier, in other words, if they pursued health rather than screening for illness, how much different would it be? I mean, in my mind, it would be massively different. It would be a completely different set of disciplines.
Because of what you're saying, a large percentage, I don't know the percentage, but what I'm saying is a large percentage of our population, particularly in the elderly, are very susceptible to being, all these things are wrong. Let's get on a bunch of medicines. Nobody's ever looking at the other side. Why aren't you looking at the ones that aren't on any medication? Why aren't what does this one do that you don't do? One of the things that, type 2 diabetes is not the diabetes you're born with. Your type 2 diabetes means you have a normal pancreas that's releasing insulin normally. And then usually, sometimes there's other reasons, but usually due to overeating, inactivity, and a lot of things, your body fat, it decreases your insulin sensitivity, and it simply can't, the insulin itself isn't producing enough to lower your blood sugar. So you often will need a drug like metformin or one of these other glucose distributors, get rid of glucose. But what's seldom mentioned, and doctors don't like it, would say type 2 diabetes is not really anything but a lifestyle. When you change that lifestyle, it is reversible. I've seen hundreds of people reverse it, but yet in fact, some doctors will argue with me that's not reversible. And as always, there are conditions and cases that are not reversible. We're individual, but the masses that eat too much, and fatty liver is when if you get fat inside your organs, and the fat gets inside the liver, and it causes insulin sensitivity to decrease, and that it's really important that your insulin is really effective. So losing fat, cutting back on sugar, increasing exercise, increasing your omega-3. There's like about 5 or 6 things you can do. And if you stick to it, you will defeat type 2 diabetes. That is not in the literature. But metformin, which is a good drug, but it's also like, why don't we just try to stop it first before we get on a drug? But no, it's not the first line.
Let's screen for negative effects. That's the philosophy that drives the medical industry, that drives the mental health industry. Let's screen for negative effects. And I keep asking myself, why aren't you screening for positive effects? Why aren't you screening for above and beyond what you would expect? Because if you can screen for that, then you can teach other people how to get there. We don't ever try to teach people how to get to a better place. We teach them how to get to a worse.
But how is that profitable, Walt?
To whom?
To the doctor.
Profitable to the psychologist or to the medical doctor, but it's very profitable to the patient.
But okay, I agree. But who are you going to go see? What you know how much debt an average doctor has graduating medical school? About $500,000. About $500,000. You know how much their malpractice insurance is a year?
Oh, crazy.
Depending on, it could be $1 million a year. So imagine having $1 million a year, and just malpractice, especially in certain fields, and having $500,000 in debt you have to pay off over however long your student loans paid off. I don't need people to be well, Walt. I need some sick people. I got some bills to pay here, and
that's precisely the problem, because that basically indicates that medical care today is not about health.
It isn't.
So I object strongly to it being called healthcare. I mean, if the whole goal is to make sure that the doctor can pay for all that medical school by having sick patients, let's call it what is. It's sick care. It's illness care. Let's be honest.
It is. And so the Western medicine model of treating symptoms is opposed to the Eastern model of treating causes and the underlying causes. Also, disclaimer here in the middle, we're blasting doctors right now. So there's some really quality doctors.
Myself, I'm blasting medical field as a whole.
But I know some really good doctors. I know some very sincere people that think like I do. So this isn't across the board. I'm just simply saying I agree with your concept. Our way of doing medicine. Then you throw into account the ridiculous insurance system we have in place. It's just randomly choosing what you pay for. It's just all these things. I'm just sitting back laughing at the battles that I will have with insurance companies. They were stupid things, minor things. And so the system itself has become it's a money-making machine built on a sickness model. There's not a wellness model out there, and that's your point.
That's my point. That I think is what's wrong. That's the part that needs to get fixed.
Right, and we circle back all the way back to the book that we're talking about, the bad therapy. That same model exists there.
Exactly.
Where you're driving people to say, your son, he's jumping up and down, and he's spinning in circles, and he just can't sit still, and the other kids are disrupted. He pulled this little girl's hair, and I think he needs some heavy-duty stimulants. I mean, something to knock his ass out, basically. Let's put him sitting down. The brain is developed. He's in the middle, 6 to 10 years old. The neuroplasticity that's taking place in the brain, it's at 25 times the rate of any other time in your life. So it's just programming time. He doesn't have time to sit there and hear your stupid story about Red Riding Hood. He needs to get out and I need to touch some stuff. I need to see what makes this work. That's what that brain's doing. That's what it's supposed to. But yet, a normal 7-year-old appears to be hyperactive based on he can't sit still. a 7-year-old should not be able to sit still. That's the point. It's so lost in that we're not understanding what we all get sad, we all get upset, we all have anxiety. Being a kid today is far harder than any other time in the world with all they're exposed to, and it's really rough being a kid right now. And social media is a part of that. As you said, it's not the sole cause, but it just sort of it amplifies everything up. Every bit of gossip used to require everybody to call everybody at night and talk to them about it. It's instantly sent out to 1,000 people on your Snapchat, and I mean it's like they're scared to be away from their phone because of the quote unquote breaking news of all the gossip. And so it's a really hard time to be a kid. And now we're going to go diagnose them. We're going to tell them you got to use hand sanitizer before you come in. When I grew up, we're playing in cow pastures, and there's a creek. My mom yelled at me one time because there's a creek where my uncle had a farm, and I'm drinking out of the creek. I didn't want to run up to the house and get water. And in retrospect, that basically is Poop Creek. It's in the cow pasture. So, I'm just sitting there drinking poop water. I didn't die. I don't know if I got sick or not, but I mean, I'm simply, my immune system saying, God, he's an idiot. Let's fix this, this kid drinking poop water. But, the idea today is just, we sanitize and we protect and we take away a lot of the stuff. When I was a kid, my parents had absolutely no clue what was going on. And I mean, literally no clue. My mom passed away with never knowing 90% of what happened in my childhood. We were wild, and probably too wild, to be honest with you. It's next level. Right now, I know where my son is because I have a Life 360 app. I know how fast he was driving when he got there. When he comes in the house, I got cameras all in the doors. He will never be able to sneak a girl into the house without me seeing him on the camera. Do you know how many girls I snuck in my house? Oh,
I have no idea, but it's probably more than zero.
It's more than zero, probably less than 100, but somewhere in there. So, and there's nobody getting caught. We would get on our bikes and ride 7 miles across town, and nobody knew that. We never said, "Hey, Mom, I was on the other side of town today." Nobody knew that. I'm not saying that's good, but today that free range kid isn't out there. And it's you look at my neighborhood on a summer afternoon, on any given day when school's out, you don't see a single child. We have so many kids in my neighborhood. It's just, but you don't see it. If you go down the pool, there'll be a lot of kids down at the pool, but they're all in their house playing video games. They're not out doing the stuff, it's that we used to do.
Yeah.
And so everything's changed. So when we start talking about like bad therapy and we've lost, I'm not some ranting, the brain and your mind, your self-esteem and your inner dialogue, we're not working on that with kids. It's like, well, we got to fix it. My son's depressed because he's upset. Well, maybe he needs something, but possibly, what if we look at other ideas? Why don't we try to get to know what's going on? Try to come up with coping mechanisms that don't require a gigantic change in your serotonin and other chemicals in your brain.
And by the way, how about looking at the solutions that address problems that really don't have anything to do with what the parent wants or what the teacher wants or what the administrator wants for the kid? Because what they usually want for the kid really has nothing to do with the kid. It usually has to do with the adult not wanting to put up with something.
Well, and one of the things I will often do with clients is when I start a new client, this happened the other day, I will meet with the mom and dad first without the client because I haven't met the client yet. So I'll be able to hear what they want to say, right? And once I meet with the client, I don't have that latitude. So I meet with the parents first, and I will hear what the mom says. It's often very different from what the dad will say, but I'll gather that. And then the kid comes in, and I will say, "Why do you think you're here?" And often it's like, "I have no idea. My mom told me to come." I said, "Why do you think your mom wants you here?" And then he'll list pretty much what the mom says. And I said, "How do you feel about that?" And he's like, I just, that's her thing. She's about that. She's mad because I don't do this, or, the neighbor. One kid told me the other day, said, my mom's mad at me because my neighbor's son, who's 14, a year younger than me, is doing coding work and making money. And I don't want to code, and she's mad because the neighbor's kid looks so, he's making money, he's 14, and his mom's bragging about it in their little chat group. And I'm out there, sneaking porn on my phone and going out and playing, video games. He said, she can't post that. I'm like, yeah, well, I get it. But and he was being facetious. He's a really good kid, but it wasn't matching what mom thought he should be doing. Exactly. And, you have a lot of that. So this isn't I'm not condemning parents. I'm not condemning doctors. It's just we have gotten into a system that's upside down. It's backwards. We're not the idea that working on internal dialogue, understanding struggle is growth. Not everything that bad things are going to happen. And part of childhood and young adulthood, and even to middle age and old age, is learning to navigate when things happen. There's not a magical pill. When my son died, I found out on a Saturday morning at 6 a.m. my son had died the night before. My coping mechanism was what it has been for many years. After a couple hours of intensive emotional distress, I knew I had to go to the gym. I worked out for a couple hours at the gym. My friends, a lot of my friends who are doctors, the news was trickling out. I had one of my best friends who's passed away, Dr. Master, said, do you want, I will drive you some Valium over or some Xanax. He said, I don't ever prescribe them, but if you need a few days, I'll do that. And I said, I appreciate you willing to do that, but I need to feel this. I need to feel it. I'm going to be fine. I don't want to medicate. I love my son, and my reaction is what a reaction will be when a parent loses a child. I'll eventually be fine, and I don't want to medicate from it. And that was important to me. I knew that because I knew everything I've been through before made me who I am today. So while horrifying to go through the death of a child, I knew I needed to feel that completely. I needed to experience that. I needed to come out on the other side of it. It was miserable. I pray no one listening ever has to go through that. I didn't want to medicate from it. I needed to feel that. And we have sort of lost that concept.
I'm reminded of a story. This will be my last contribution, and then you can do your wrap up. But I'm reminded of a story that's told about an Eastern guru / teacher who had a student who was trying to learn some very basic lessons in life, and the teacher gave him a cocoon and said, I want you to watch this cocoon. I want you to watch what happens and report back to me. And so the student very carefully started watching the cocoon. He was observing it every day. And then one day he saw the cocoon starting to break apart. And he saw the moth inside struggling to get out. And he said, oh my God, I'm responsible for this thing. I have to do something here. So he goes over and he pulls the cocoon open, and the moth comes out, and then 5 minutes later dies. And he says, oh no, I can't believe I didn't open it fast enough. And he very sadly, a few days later, talks to his teacher, and his teacher said, no, your mistake wasn't in helping the moth. Your mistake was that you helped the moth at all. Because the moth needed to beat its wings in order to open that cocoon, in order to strengthen its wings enough to live. You took away its ability to live because you took away its ability to fight through it.
I love that analogy. There's another analogy, and I don't know who this author is, and it's been a long time since I read the book, but one therapist, psychologist, whoever, was doing a study on children who were born vaginally and children that were born with a C-section.
Okay.
The vaginal children had this, that isn't a pretty sight if you've ever seen that. It's not real pretty. It's hard to get out of that. It's not pleasant. I can imagine it's painful. I know it's painful for the mom. I can't believe the kid's enjoying it either. But a C-section, you just simply cut that open, gently pull the child out. It didn't have, and the author of the book was indicating that kids that were born of C-section tended to have less resilience than people who were born vaginally. I want to look it up now and get more accurate. I don't want to start saying things that are wrong, but I remember thinking that's an interesting perspective because the struggle is growth. The strengthening process. We were put here. Our bodies are incredible. Our minds and body are incredibly resilient. We were put here to struggle and grow. We were put here to overcome. We weren't put here to sit here and sit in safety and take pills. Our immune system is strengthened by all the stuff that we're exposed to. Our muscles grow by struggle. I'm in the gym and my muscles, they have no choice. They better grow. They got to keep up. I don't lose muscle mass at the rate that most people my age lose, but I don't allow it to happen. Your bodies were built for action, and that's how they grow and sustain. And when you cut back on that action and you cut back on those other things, that's why we talked before about retirement kills people. The body will meet the demands you put on it, but the moment you stop demanding, it quickly starts deteriorating. So the idea that we making things easier and coddling, and I'm not this hardcore. You know me, I'm not that guy. But
You're not that guy. I love that.
Yeah, I'm not that guy that's go toughen up and do that. I understand everybody goes to things. We need to be gentle with people. But at the end of the day, the idea that we're going to take the struggle out of life. I work with a lot of wealthy families. And when I say wealthy, I'm talking billionaire and above kind of people, not just normal 100 million
not
people.
Not the normal millionaire type.
Yeah. And I am saddened to see the misery of usually the grandson, the 35-year-old grandson of your grandpa's retired. He's left with unbelievable money, never had to do anything in his life. He's 35 years old. He's sitting up in his mansion in Palm Beach, miserable, just hating life. He never accomplished a thing. He's looking for things to complain about. He's screaming at the Fox News channel all day for all the atrocities. And that's a real case. That's a real case. And
I believe it.
Of all the people I work with, he is one of the saddest, most miserable people I know. And he has a net worth of about $900 million.
Wow. Yeah.
And he's miserable. And he has tried to buy his way to happiness. It's never enough. It's never enough. And he was robbed of his poverty. He was robbed of his struggle. His grandfather, who made this incredible fortune, started in the Depression and just fought his way through it and became incredibly wealthy, working 80-hour weeks, working, building these empires. And his grandson never has worked a day in his life. He went to some private college that he just partied the entire time and got his degree. Just sort of here's $100,000 semester college, and we got our degree. And so it looks good. And he's on the board of directors of some company. He doesn't do anything. He just doesn't show up for the meetings, but he gets a chunk of money for doing that. He has nothing. It's one of the saddest people I ever met.
That's really something. Yeah, quite the proverbial tale right there. Not the happiest. We normally like to finish the episode on an upswing. That's not really an upswing.
Sorry for that.
It's an important point to remember. I think we'll treat it that way as the outgoing, which is struggle isn't necessarily a bad thing. It can be a very good thing. It's just it's really a question of perspective. What are you thinking about it?
And we'll turn the curve back up here. I am so grateful, and I've had a few struggles in my life. I could not be happier with my life today. I had the perfect life for me. And I owe it to the struggle, and it wasn't a bad thing. At the time, it was pretty bad, it seemed like, but I wouldn't be the man I am today without the struggle, all of it from my childhood on. So I feel grateful for the struggle. I feel grateful for the trauma because of the lessons it taught me. And I believe anyone can obtain that, but so much of it is perspective based.
Yeah, it really is, no doubt about it. Well, you were right. This is a perfect topic for us. And I don't know that we'll have solved anything for most people, but maybe we got a few people to think about things differently. That
I hope so.
maybe we change. Maybe this is like the beginning of changing the way we think about what the role of therapy should be in society, rather than just assuming it has to be there to solve everything.
Well, and also knowing that, the conclusions we can draw sometimes are often influenced by the people who are conducting studies or doing things, a lot of their perspectives sometimes. So lost, and we have become a nation where, it's like, okay, you got to be really careful about what you say, and you got to coddle. And that pendulum has swung a little too far, I think.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about pendulums, they always swing back.
Swing back. That's it, buddy. That's it. Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you much. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody. Got a little guy here.